Welcome to the Rugby Obsession Deep Dive. Let's start with a little thought experiment. Imagine you're standing at a crosswalk at, like 3 in the morning.
Okay, set the scene.
Yeah, the street is completely empty. There is not a single car in sight for miles in any direction, but the pedestrian light is glowing a bright, uncompromising red.
Right.
Technically, stepping off that curb is jaywalking. It's a violation of the law, but, if you cross and a police officer happens to be standing right there on the corner watching you, are they really going to write you a ticket?
Oh, I mean, most likely they won't even blink.
Exactly.
Because enforcing the rule at that exact moment doesn't really serve the fundamental purpose of the rule, which is, to keep you from getting hit by a car.
Right.
Giving you a citation would just slow down your night, waste the officer's time, and basically service the letter of the law while completely ignoring the reality of the situation.
Which is the perfect way to frame what we are exploring today. Before we jump in, though, a quick reminder to subscribe to the Rugby Obsession YouTube channel and newsletter from the link in description. We've got so much great content coming your way.
Definitely do that.
So getting back to it, usually when we think about the rules of a major professional sport, we assume they are absolute. I mean, you step out of bounds, the whistle blows.
Yeah, you jump the gun, you're disqualified.
But today, we're taking you into the middle of a professional rugby pitch, where that black and white rulebook becomes incredibly gray. We're looking at an action that happens in almost every single professional match. It's technically illegal by the letter of the law, but referees at the absolute highest level actively turn a blind eye to it.
It is the absolute definition of muddy water for sports officiating.
It really is.
We are pulling our insights today from a really fantastic piece over at Planet Rugby by Jared Wright. His article is called Law Discussion. World Rugby's latest clarification proves there is a common sense approach to officiating.
Such a great read.
It really is, and it reveals something profound. This isn't a case of referees just, missing a fast-moving foul because human eyes aren't perfect. This is a deliberate, philosophical choice being made across the board by the sport's governing body.
Right. So our mission for you on this deep dive is to explore how World Rugby is prioritizing the spectacle, basically the continuous flow of the game, over strict adherence to their own rulebook.
And what that reveals about the balance between strict compliance and common sense.
Exactly. So to understand why a referee would ignore a blatant rule violation, we have to look at the catalyst that forced World Rugby to publicly address this elephant in the room.
And that catalyst came directly from New Zealand Rugby, the NZRU.
Oh, right.
They basically forced the governing body's hand by submitting a formal request for clarity regarding a very specific play, the scrum-half, or the number 9.
Let's pause there and paint a picture for the listener who might just be getting into the finer details of the sport. The scrum-half is essentially the quarterback or the point guard, right?
That's a great way to think about it. They dictate the tempo, they grab the ball from the ground and distribute it to the runners.
They're the primary decision makers, linking the heavy forwards and the fastbacks. So the NZRU asked a very pointed, highly technical question about this player.
Right, they asked, is a scrum-half allowed to move beyond the back foot of a ruck and use their hands to move the ball?
Now, we definitely need to define ruck before we go any further, because this entire debate hinges on what happens inside of one.
Good call. So, picture a spontaneous, violent mini-wrestling match over the ball on the ground.
Like a player gets tackled, hits the turf, and immediately massive guys from both teams sprint over and smash into each other, forming this human roof over the ball.
Yep, they're trying to physically push the other team backward to win possession. The physical intensity cannot be overstated. You have thousands of pounds of human force colliding over a small, unprotected target.
It's chaotic.
Highly chaotic, which is why the rulebook has very strict parameters. And that brings us to Law 5.11. This law explicitly states that once that human roost, the ruck, has formed, no player may handle the ball with their hands unless they had their hands on it before the ruck formed.
And they have to stay on their feet.
Exactly.
See, that seems unequivocal to me. No player may handle the ball. It leaves zero room for interpretation.
You'd think so.
Right. But then you look at the reality of modern professional rugby. Jared Wright's article uses 2 perfect examples from just a single weekend of top-tier matches to show how routinely this rule is tossed out the window.
The timing within these matches is what's so wild. Take the United Rugby Championship quarterfinal. It's a massive knockout game between the Stormers and Cardiff. The match kicks off, and exactly 10 seconds into the game.
10 seconds.
Literally 10 seconds. Storner's scrum-half Imad Khan reaches directly into a formed ruck. He uses his hands to roll the ball backward, setting himself up for a box kick.
He reached right in. I mean, according to Law 5.1, that should be an immediate penalty to Cardiff.
Right. And the referee, Ogun Cross, is standing maybe 3 feet away, staring right at it.
Hmm.
But he doesn't reach for his whistle. He just lets the play continue.
And this wasn't an isolated incident, right?
Not at all. The article points to a Super Rugby Pacific match between the Crusaders and the Hurricanes that same weekend. Just 24 seconds into that match, Crusaders number 9, Noah Hotham, does the exact same thing. Reaches in, uses his hands, pulls the ball back. No penalty.
Okay, I have to push back here because this is where my brain starts short-circuiting a bit. If the rule book explicitly outlaws hands in the ruck, how can professional referees just ignore it so consistently? Is there like a secret understanding we don't know about?
It's not a secret understanding, but there is a higher guiding principle that supersedes the individual laws. When World Rugby responded to the NZRU, they didn't deny it was illegal under Law 5.11. They fully admitted it.
Wow, really?
Yeah. Instead of doubling down, they pointed officials toward something called the playing charter.
The playing charter. Okay. But real quick, speaking of guiding principles, this is a perfect time to remind you to subscribe to the Rugby Obsession YouTube channel and newsletter from the link in description. So, the playing charter. What exactly does this document do that allows a referee to override a written rule?
It acts as the philosophical foundation of rugby union. World Rugby basically instructed officials that laws cannot be enforced in a vacuum. They must be read alongside this charter.
Okay, so it forces referees to ask not just what the rule is, but what the game is trying to achieve at that exact second.
Exactly.
Which brings up the ultimate question, what is the game trying to achieve? If you're a ref standing over a pile of bruised athletes, what's your primary directive?
Balance. The charter's goal is to establish the essential balance between continuity of play and continuity of possession. Wright pulls out a fascinating detail. The charter references the word contest 9 times.
Okay, 9 times.
And it references continuity 8 times.
Oh, wow. 9 to 8. That is incredibly tight. They are telling referees that a fair fight for the ball and a flowing game are virtually tied for the most important aspect of the sport.
It highlights the tension perfectly. You need a fair contest or it's not a competitive sport. But you also desperately need the game to flow, otherwise you just have a static, exhausting wrestling match.
I totally see the philosophy, but how does this actually play out in the mud? How does a ref decide in a split second that continuity is suddenly more important? They can't read the players' minds.
No, they read biomechanics and visual cues to determine when the contest is over. Let's look back at that Stormers match. Damien Willems catches the ball, gets dragged down by 2 Cardiff defenders. A ruck is forming.
Right, the human roof is about to be built.
But here's the visual cue. Cardiff opted not to commit any bodies to that ruck.
Oh.
Yeah, the referee looks at the hips and shoulders of the defenders. Are they leaning forward, bracing for impact? No, they're backpedaling, fanning out to form a defensive wall.
Ah, so they made a tactical choice to abandon the fight for the ball.
Exactly. They traded the chance of a turnover for better defensive position. Because Cardiff is no longer competing for the ball, the contest is officially over.
This feels exactly like a scenario in a tabletop role-playing game, like Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh, how so?
Well, you have this massive rulebook governing combat. If 2 players are fighting over a treasure chest, the game master forces everyone to follow every single rule, rolling dice, calculating armor classes.
By the mechanics.
But if the monsters suddenly retreat and yield the chest, the game master doesn't force the players to sit there and roll dice to hit an empty box for 10 minutes. They just say, the battle's over, take your loot, let's keep the story moving.
That analogy hits the nail on the head. Forcing dice rolls in an empty room would bore everyone. World Rugby explicitly stated that while the scrum-halves' actions contravene the pure law wordings, there is no material offense caused.
No material offense caused. That's a massive legal concept. It implies a broken rule only matters if breaking it actually harms the opponent or the game's integrity.
That is the crux of the common sense approach. The charter wants quick play. Penalizing a player for moving a secured ball with their hands when nobody else is fighting for it goes entirely against the spectacle.
Now, knowing why this rule has been is fascinating, but what happens if referees act like rigid robots? Because this common sense approach wasn't always the standard, was it?
Not at all. Before this shift a few years ago, referees did strictly enforce Law 5.11. If a scrum half used their hands inside the ruck, whistle blew, penalty given.
So how on earth did they get the ball out to pass it?
They had to use their feet.
What? Really?
Yeah, you'd have the scrum half trying to balance on one leg while surrounded by massive forwards, blindly reaching into the pile with their other leg, wearing studded boots to try and hook the ball backward.
That sounds clumsy and, frankly, quite
It
dangerous.
was dangerous, but mostly it was detrimental to the sport. The article describes it as a painstaking, boring, and time-sapping action. It took seconds, which is an eternity.
And while they're playing a terrible game of foot billiards, the defense is just resting and resetting.
Exactly, it completely stalled the attack.
So by allowing the scrum half to just grab the ball with their hands, what are the concrete benefits we see today?
Cleaner distribution is the biggest one. Rolling the ball back gives the number 9 a stable base. They can plant both feet and execute a highly accurate pass or a perfect box kick. But there's also a secondary benefit related to Law 15.20.
Remind me, what is Law 15.20?
It deals with what happens when the ball becomes unplayable at a ruck. If the ref decides the ball is hopelessly stuck, they stop the clock and award a scrum.
Wait, if it's stuck, isn't a scrum the safest option? Why avoid it?
Because of the physical toll and the time scrums consume, 16 heavy men slamming into each other. It takes time to set up safely, and half the time it collapses and has to be reset. It drains the energy out of the stadium.
And under the old strict enforcement, the ball was deemed unplayable quite often.
Constantly. Because they couldn't hook it out with their feet fast enough, the ref would get impatient and call for a scrum.
But now, because they can use their hands, those calls have plummeted.
Exactly. The source notes you see far fewer unplayable balls at a standard ruck now. Mostly just in mauls or double tackles, where defenders actively hold the ball carrier up.
That is a massive systemic improvement. But I have to ask, if refs are encouraged to override strict rules when it suits the spectacle, doesn't that make them lawmakers? Where does common sense stop and subjective refereeing begin?
That's the tightrope, and it's a valid critique. It injects a high degree of subjectivity. The referee has to instantly judge human intent.
Right. If I'm a coach and one ref says the contest was over, but the next week a different ref penalizes my player for the exact same thing, I am going to lose my mind.
The frustration is real, but the counterargument is that the alternative is drastically worse. Fans and media constantly blast refs for not using common sense. You know how enraged you get when a brilliant play is disallowed because of a minor technicality 50 meters back?
The dreaded technicality. It feels like a betrayal of the spirit of the game.
Exactly. So the consensus is that trusting the referee to read the game is vastly superior to forcing them to act like unfeeling robots.
And this brings us out of the rugby pitch and into something much bigger, something that directly impacts you, the listener. Let us know your thoughts and opinions in the comments, by the way, because what we're really talking about is a masterclass in systemic common sense.
Whether you are managing a corporate team or dealing with bureaucracy, there are always rules designed to maintain order.
But sometimes, rigidly servicing those rules defeats the purpose. If an internal compliance rule requires 5 middle managers to sign off on a routine email, that rule is acting exactly like the old feet-only ruck law.
It's a time-sapping action that halts momentum.
Spot on. True expertise is knowing when the contest is over, when the risk is gone, and it's time to apply a bit of harmless liberty.
It takes confidence to bend the rules safely.
It really does. Which leaves us with a final, slightly provocative thought for you to chew on. If a core rule is openly ignored for the betterment of the sport, should the governing body just rewrite the rulebook to match reality?
I mean, it seems like the logical next step to remove the ambiguity.
Or is there a hidden genius in keeping the rules strict on paper, but flexible in practice? It gives referees the ultimate subjective tool. They can keep the game flowing, but if a ruck gets dangerously chaotic, they always have Law 5.1 in their back pocket to immediately blow the whistle and regain control.
It's a fascinating paradox.
Yeah.
The strict rule exists as a boundary line when chaos gets too close.
A boundary line that only appears when you actually need it. Brilliant system design. And before we wrap up, one last reminder to subscribe to the Rugby Obsession YouTube channel and newsletter from the link in description. Thank you for listening to the Rugby Obsession Deep Dive, and we'll look forward to you listening to our next episode.